Hey everyone, just playing my PlayStation Portal. This is such a great device. If you haven't used one, don't rush into buying one. Now that's not to say this isn't really cool, because it is. This thing is fantastic. I can give you a quick little rundown. I'm playing the Yakuza Like a Dragon, or Like a Dragon 7 here in Japan. And this is a fantastic handheld. But today I want to talk about the future of Sony handhelds. What's really going on with it? Where is it leading? And I have some thoughts and some cool dream theories that I'd like to give the next Sony handheld. And no, this is not the next Sony handheld. This is just a cool device in general. I love this thing. I originally bought this because I thought I was going to take a winter trip to Hokkaido. I love it. But I thought I was going to take a winter trip to Hokkaido, and that didn't really happen, unfortunately. But I still love the PlayStation Portal. I love the idea that I could go on some really cool trip and take the PS5 essentially with me anywhere I go. So there's that. But you know what? Speaking of Sony and their cool devices, it's just interesting to think back that it all started with this. A simple 2-transistor radio. How in 1945, two engineers could come together and make basically a radio repair shop. And 50 years later, they're the biggest names in gaming. It's just funny how that works, isn't it? But you know what? It's not just the radio. It's the idea of taking something and going crazy with it. Going to places that nobody would expect. Like when the PlayStation 1 came out, most people only thought of them as the Walkman people. And yes, this is a 1979 original TPSL2 Walkman. I love this thing. Oh, Walkmans are so great. There's just something magical about analog. But you know, people often think, no, Sony doesn't need to go back into handheld gaming. And to that I say, yes they do. Yes they do, for so many reasons. The biggest reason being, nobody thought anyone could come close to challenging Nintendo. But you know what scared Nintendo? The PSP. This was the true thing that scared Nintendo. Their Game Boy Advance looked outdated in a heartbeat, and the DS may be the second most successful game console of all time, but if we're comparing it graphically and functionally to the PSP, no, not even close. It had cool games, and it had Nintendo's seal of quality and seal of their first-party titles, such as Super Mario, Zelda, Phantom Hourglass, and of course, Pokemon, because let's be fair, when it comes to Nintendo and their handhelds, Pokemon is what makes them sell. But Sony brought actual CD quality, DVD quality to a tiny handheld, PS2-esque games to the pocket, and that to me is so good. And of course, Sony's best handheld, which at the time of recording I cannot find mine, the Vita. It's here somewhere. Oh. Speak the devil's name and he shall appear. Yeah, the Vita. This, to this day, has been the handheld that refuses to die. It is still loved by millions. It has one of the most dedicated following groups of all time. This thing was the PS3 to go. And it wasn't just PS3 to go. It was full-scale videos, a battery that lasts a really long time, a great screen. Touch screen? That's a give and take. I'm not a huge fan of the touchscreen, honestly, and I'm really not a fan of the rear touchscreen. Never liked when games use that, but I digress. It is a fantastic handheld. It is my favorite handheld. The 3DS was cool, but it aged pretty hard. It did. The Vita felt like it still hits with the big boys. Which brings us, what will the next handheld be? And should they make one? I think so. I think so, absolutely. For one, Sony's a hardware company. They should be making new hardware. Sony's also the biggest name in gaming. So, why not? The Switch has done absolutely fantastic throughout its overall existence. I love the Switch. I do. I actually have two of them. I don't know why about the second one. One of those time and place situations, and the OLED screen is nice. Not gonna lie. It is cool. But the reality is, Sony needs to make a new handheld. And I have some thoughts on what it could be and what you could really do with it. The first thing that I want to point out, what game format will it use? And there's two ways I see Sony going about this, or what they could do. Number one, they could use literally the same chips as the Vita. And this, in my opinion, could be a way to say we're sorry to the Vita fans. It would allow backwards compatibility, which, I mean, that just needs to be a thing in general. And it would just be nice to have the same chip format. But if they weren't going to do that and they still wanted cartridges, what they could do is they could go the route of the CF Express Type A card. Now, I am a Sony Alpha user, and what's cool is if you take one of the newer Sony cameras and you see the CF Express Type A port, why I think this could work is they could have a new card port that could be a 2-in-1. So you could either put a Vita or the new chip type in there, and that would still be pretty cool if they have a new, better idea. Just a thought. Or they could go the second way. They could go the route of bringing back the UMD. Peace Walker in all its glory. But I was thinking, why not make it a Blu-ray UMD? They could have tons of space in a tiny disc, and it could be really cool. Think about it. PS4, I mean, literally, PS4 in the palm of your hand. And I know people will be like, well, there's so many ways to remote play. Remote play is not the same thing as an actual gaming system. Remote play is not the same thing. You need a really good connection for remote play to be passable. Like, this does good. I'm not going to say it doesn't. It is cool. It's, like I said, if you don't have a real reason to buy one of these, just don't. I do love the Portal, but it is not a must-have Sony peripheral. It is not a 3D Pulse headset. It is not a PSP in 2006. It is not a Vita. It's a very niche item for a very specific group of people, and that's the problem. Sony could easily make their own version of the Steam Deck. And the Steam Deck is quite successful. I don't have one, but maybe in the future. I don't know. I don't play enough Steam to really care one way or another, honestly. There are some Steam games that I would like to play, such as Fear and Hunger. Thank you, Super Eye Patch Wolf, for getting me obsessed with a game that I cannot play, because I don't know. I think my laptop might be able to handle it. It should be, but I don't have a gaming laptop. I don't have a gaming computer, honestly. I am a PlayStation guy. So, I personally think the idea of having a bigger Vita with the new OLED screen and a more Switch-like design would be really cool. Not too much bigger, but maybe like yay big? Something like that? I don't know. But to have 2 triggers, refine the back touchpad, or even just keep it the same if it's just backwards compatible with the Vita. And then, of course, features and things that it should be able to do. I think if PS4 games, if it's going after the PS4, it would be great to have the PS4 library right from the get-go. I think that should be a must. Same with the Vita PSP library, digital downloads. I think those should just be available right from the start. Same with if it's backwards compatible with either UMD or Vita chips. I think it should be just 100% backwards compatible, and I think their fan base already on their side. But not only that, I see the next handheld, the Vita 2, as I'm just going to say from now on, Vita 2, should be more than just a gaming machine. I think Sony needs to bring back older things that have been missing, such as PlayStation Home. They could make it a handheld, like a beta to the handheld, and it should be a social interaction. To be able to go into PlayStation Home and interact with other people, have like an almost Animal Crossing-esque app that you could design your home, design your room, design how you play games, have your trophies, have just many different things that makes your gameplay yours. And not only that, I think it should interact with the PS5 or possibly PS6. I think we're going to see the PS6 announced in a couple of years. I don't think the PS5 is going to remain a long-lasting system. I love it, but honestly, I think the next generation could be coming sooner than we think. And I'm kind of excited. For as much as PC gamers go on about new graphics cards, I get excited for new hardware. I would love to see a 1-2 combo, just like the PSP into the PS3, and the Vita into the PS4. I'd love to see a new handheld and the PS6 and have them really connect together. I think it could be really cool. Not only that, but other features that the next handheld should and have to do. Number 1, the have to, standard SD memory card. Micro SD, or full-size SD. I don't really care which one. Preferably full-size SD. But, again, doesn't really matter. Sony has screwed themselves twice when it comes to the memory card situation. And that's because the first time they were trying to promote their proprietary memory card, and for those who have forgotten or don't really know, that is this little guy, the Pro Stick Duo. But this card wasn't really so much of a problematic piece as it was just kind of annoying. Memory cards back then were expensive. It didn't matter if it was SD or Pro Stick Duo. Pro Stick Duo could have easily been the victor if more devices accepted it, but it was Sony trying to promote their cards. The funny thing is, Sony has tons of memory cards. They have the fastest running regular SD cards as well as CF Express Type A cards, which are awesome. So expensive. Those are just for the camera world. And then if you're a Nikon shooter, or Nikon as the rest of the world says, there's the XQD cards. And those big boys are super fast, but super expensive. So, you know, it could have worked, but the Vita is not a defendable situation. The Vita's memory cards are only the Vita's memory cards, and the problem with the Vita's memory card, it is just a slightly misshaped micro SD. So, for them being so expensive and still not being anything great, Sony would have to compete with, well, not so much compete, but they would need to just accept standard memory card. At least for basic PS4 games. Maybe they'll have internal SSDs. That'd be so cool to have an M.2 inside of it. But the only problem with that would be probably battery. And also price. That handheld would get expensive quickly if they were to put the M.2 in there, but who knows? Maybe it could work. That'd be so cool. But the other thing I think that they could easily accomplish with the Vita 2 is VR2. The VR2 only requires a USB-C. So, the VR2 could be possible to play on the go. That'd be pretty cool. I mean, because the VR2 doesn't require the cameras. It's not the VR1. You don't have a bunch of cables. You don't have HDMIs all over. You don't need the camera. You don't need specifics. You would only need the headset and your controllers if you're playing VR2 games. Or it could just use standard, the handheld as a controller if you're playing standard PS4 games, and it's like a on-screen, on-the-go. That'd be pretty cool. And, like I was saying with the PlayStation Home, is that you could interlink the two. I think that could be pretty cool. But what I'd really love to see is more cross-compatible devices. Have both the handheld PlayStation 6 and VR be interchangeable with each other. I think that could be a really big, experience. I miss the days of the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance, and you could, plug in the GBA into the cube and get all these features with specific games and just the device itself. And it was like, your games got so much bigger just from having these neat little accessories. And I miss that, I do. I think gaming's gotten too bare bones basic. And I'm not saying we need weird controllers or anything like that, Nintendo. I just think gaming needs to be more accessible in new ways. And I think a handheld could definitely provide for that. But I think the biggest thing that a PlayStation Vita 2 could do is there's a lot of people, including myself, who want Nintendo to go back to making games like the GameCube era. And a lot of people, especially millennials, this guy right here, we miss the 6th generation. We miss the PS2, Xbox, GameCube era. We miss that specific type of gameplay. I think a new Vita could easily have cheaper games on a system that could be really good to emulate the 6th generation and the early 7th generation. Bring back games like Jet Set Radio, Twilight Princess, Oni, Shadow of the Colossus. Bring those classic styles in a new way. That could be really cool to have games like that. Bring back Ape Escape, Sly Cooper. I think on a console it's a big ask because Sony wants their main games to be these huge AAA, larger than life, story driven games that, yes, I get it, that you buy their home consoles for their experience. God of War, Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Rise of the Ronin, Ghost of Tsushima. These games are huge. These games are massive in scale, and they require a lot of money and time to make. And I get that. I do. That's why a handheld makes more sense to have studios that can finish games on a cheaper budget, smaller experiences, and to emulate an era that is kind of just being missed in general. I think that could be really cool. And who's to say? But you know what? I think that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm glad you guys sat through this. Please leave a like, a comment. Let's have a discussion in the comment section. Be kind, rewind. Let's talk about what we love, because that is what gaming is all about. It's not about power. It's not about frames per second. It's about enjoying your hobby and making some friends along the way. Later.